Right, as you can see, we've got the Patrol back in the shed. Now, it's been some time since I've made a video, but I am back. Now, what we're doing today is I've got a camping trip booked in just 2 weeks, but the car is completely untested, especially in full drive. Now, I've driven it home, driven it around, and it's running mint, but we've still got the front drive shaft sitting on the bench behind you. All the parts I've been collecting are also quite important for this trip. Now, we've got a winch, communications, we've got navigation. We're gonna get all that installed into the car today, make this thing a little bit of a super tourer. So let's go.
Proudly supported by Superior Engineering and Diesel Conversions Australia.
First thing was the drive shaft. Now, I just got that installed. Now, it comes really close to the exhaust, like I said before, but let me show you what I mean. Right, so this is the front drive shaft here, and this heat-wrapped exhaust is what I mean about how there's not much clearance between here. Can only fit just 3 fingers in, and when this articulates, it's actually gonna flex up and probably push into this exhaust here, which has always been a little bit of a concern to me. So I'm actually gonna chuck a jack under the front here. I'm gonna jack it up and just see the trajectory of this front drive shaft. That's about as high as I can go there. We still have a fair bit of clearance there, but obviously I can't really simulate full driving. So what we're gonna have to probably do is just go out, hit a few trails and just keep an eye on that area, like flex it up on a rock and just get under and take a look. Right, now the next job that I wanna get done is try to level out this motor just a little bit. Now, as you can kind of tell, the motor is kind of tucked back and there's a few heater hoses that are kind of jammed up against the firewall there. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that, but the motor is just tilted back just a little bit too much. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. You could go ahead and change the engine mounts, or you can lift the transmission mounts up, which we're gonna be lifting the transmission mounts up. It's a much simpler way to do it. Basically, what I need to do is unbolt the transmission mounts and then put a jack on it, lift it up, slide something in. Hopefully, I've got long enough bolts to re-bolt up the mount. If not, I'll have to race away, get some bolts, come back, bolt it back up, but at least the motor will be a lot more level. So I'll start by just undoing these clamps, and that's so when I do move the motor, it doesn't actually torque on these pipes here and I can reseat them. I'm gonna do the intercooler pipes and just this intake pipe, and that's it. Right, so I've unbolted the mounts and under there I have the jack. So all I have to do is jack it up until I'm happy. Then I've got to make a mount. So we'll just see how much this moves here and if anything's gonna bind up. It's moving. I don't know if you guys can tell, but that is much, much leveler than what it was before. Down there, you'll see these hoses now. They're not jammed up against the firewall, which is the main thing that I was concerned about. Now, the reason why it was so far leaned back is because when you install these superior arms here, these trailing arms, those ones there, they come with a drop box, and that drop box spaces this gearbox cross member down, which means that it drops the whole transmission down. The other issue I was facing is the rear drive shaft was getting really close to that cross member there. So now we've got a lot more clearance under that as well. You can see the mounts I'm playing with there. Now what I've got to do is make a spacer to space under those mounts and try and find some longer bolts to bolt it all back up. Now I found this bit of aluminium here. It's perfect for a spacer. Good thing is on the gearbox is this little mount here, which you can actually take off, and I'm gonna get the bolt holes and the measurements off that. So it's gonna be perfect when I slide it under the gearbox. That's 2. Let's get them under. Should work good. Right, now everything underneath is nice and tight. And you can see that motor is a lot more level. Now, it is still sitting back, which is quite normal for this conversion, but it's definitely a lot more forward than what it used to be. And the main thing is that it's not squishing my heater hose anymore. Now I may have some adjusting to do with the gear stick lever there underneath, but I'll get to that a little bit later. We're gonna move on. I'm gonna take this bull bar off. We're gonna do winch, lights, and UHF. I've never actually owned a winch before, which is quite exciting. So I'm gonna get this off now, get the winch on, see if we can hook it up and get it all working. Now the winch that we have decided to go with on this GU build is the Rumba 13XP Premium. Now the reason that we went the Rumba is because they're an extremely reliable winch and they're also waterproof. So they're IP68, I believe. It's been a long time since I looked at the specs, but waterproof on the motor side and the gearbox side, which means that you can go through creek crossings and stuff and not stress about water ingress into the winch itself. The reason I went the 13 instead of the 11 and 12 is because the GU is actually getting up there with its weight. The Superior suspension, it's like 3 times the weight of factory suspension. You're talking bead locks, 35, stuff like that. It doesn't take long to get up into the range where you start needing a bigger winch than what most people recommend. 13,000 pounds is a huge winch. Physically, this is actually a big winch as well. Like if you measure from there to there, not a lot of bars fit this winch. I did confirm with Jimmy Bars that the 13XP does fit on this bar, so we are ready to go. This should be pretty straightforward. I've never actually done a winch before, but everything seems to be color coded and whatnot. So I'll get this bolted up and yeah, we'll get the bar lifted back up. Hopefully I can lift the two together and get it back up on the car. On a side note, I do love this thing without a bull bar on it for some reason. I actually forgot that this Jimmy bar had this little extrusion here to take the bracket to actually mount the control box there. Now the Rumba bracket stuck out 90 degree, which means the control box would have come out here. Because we've got a front mount intercooler, we were clashing with this pipe here. So basically all I did is flatten out the bracket and then mounted it behind this bracket here, and that brings it over to the side and tucks it away. The good thing is the control thing is literally just there, so that's nice and neat and easy to get to. If I didn't say it before, the Rumba 13XP comes with like a little fob thing for in and out, like a little garage clicker thing. So we won't even be using that little manual control box, whatever you want to call that. Now what we're gonna do is lift this back up onto the car and mount it back up, and this will be the last time that it came off. Wasn't really filming, but I had to lift that on and off about 5 times then. And she's bloody heavy now, I'll tell you. So I'm gonna get that back up. Hopefully it's the last time. Let's get it going. Right, I got the bar back on. Now I noticed that this winch wasn't actually sitting perfectly flat, which means that it didn't actually fit. So I had to take it off and grind down the inside of here because the motor was actually just hitting the inside of the bar here. I've also gone ahead and just wired up the winch side of things. So, I mean, these are pretty self-explanatory with the colors, and I just put some conduit around it. Man, who would have thought it would have been this hard to put a winch in? It's taken me friggin' ages, but it's in. The bar's on. Now, all I've got to do is hook up the negative and positive wire. Right, now the positive and negative of the winch are coming through. One thing that a winch 100% needs is an isolator. Now, the winch did come with its own isolator and a little bracket, but we already have this isolator here, which is from All Good Off-Road, and it goes on our little accessory panel right here. The reason that you need this is because when you're just driving around town, you don't need your winch to be active, so you just flick it off, and that kills all power to the front of this winch, so that if you ever had a problem on the road, nothing is going to catch fire or anything like that. So I'll get this mounted up onto that All Good panel, and we shall have a working winch. All right guys, that is the winch all mounted up. I'm pretty happy with everything except for the fact that I did lose my bolts that were meant to bolt this down to the plate. I do need to test it, so I have the remote here. So I'm going to flick this to on, and if nothing catches on fire, which it hasn't, then we go across to here, and I think we just hold down the power, then we get the light, and we go in and out. Beautiful, it works well. One thing I read online is that these 13XPs have really good line speed, which, I mean, that seems fast enough for me. I don't really know what is good line speed. Obviously, you can go nuts. You could build like a $4,000 high mount winch, but honestly, if I've gotten through this long with full drive without a winch, do you really need a $4,000 winch? Leave that one with you guys. Now, when I bought this soft shackle not too long ago, we all know about the big steel hooks and stuff like that. They can go flying and they can do a lot of damage. So I'm going to be using soft shackles as much as possible, although I do still have those hooks. They come with the winch and with my recovery kit. So now that we're done with the winch install, we can move on to the next job, which is the UHF. Now, a lot of people ask me, what's the first mod that they should do to their full drive? And I always answer with UHF, because if you're out full driving, you need to chat to your mates, let them know what you're doing. You need a UHF to do that. Now we are going with the XRS Connect full drive pack. I've ran this a few times. I've also worked with GME on a few different occasions. And guys, let me tell you, GME is the best UHF. There's no doubt about it. I've done a few UHF installs over the time, so I'm gonna run through how I install them with you guys, show you a few little tips and tricks that I know about. Right, now I always opt for this 2.1 stubby antenna. I actually reckon that they look a lot better than the bigger ones, but they also work in hilly environments. It's not very often that I'm out in like a desert or anything, so I always go with this stubby one, and it's worked really well for me. Now this is the controller. The good thing about GME is all the buttons are on the controller. There's also a speaker on it, but my favorite thing about GME is that they still use a lever and not a button. There's some brands, I won't name who, that just have a little button on the side and it's really tricky to push in, but the lever's definitely a lot easier. Another really cool feature is it's got a magnetic base, so there's no trying to find that hook. You just literally throw it up there and it slaps it on like that. Right, now the next step is to jump inside your car and figure out where you want to mount everything. The main thing you want to focus on is the hand controller. Now this is what you're going to be picking up and talking on. So I'm going to be mounting that right about here, somewhere I can pick it up, and it's going to be nice and comfortable for me. And once you figure out a spot for that, you need to also figure out a spot for the control box. Now the older style UHFs, to get a channel, you actually had to dial in the control on the control box, but these days this can get tucked away. I'm actually going to be mounting it up inside the glove box so we can shut that up and never see it again, because I don't like the look of them. Right, now I've taken the glove box out here. I'm going to mount the UHF inside of this so that we can hide it away. Right, so I got the bracket installed, which means this will now just slide in like that. Got the control box all mounted up. I've also added the extension cord in. It's plugged into the power as well. The only thing we've got to do is run the aerial through and plug it in, but we'll have to do that last. So this can now get mounted back up in the car, and we'll just snake all our wiring in behind it. Right, that is all mounted up and back in. You can see shuts nice and easy. When you come out, just drops down. Now the reason I like it in there is just because it's up and out from the water. It's not going to get damaged if you go through a water crossing, and it just tucks away quite nicely. Another good option is under your center console, but I've already got my transmission computer under there. I'm slowly running out of room to mount stuff. The UHF handpiece is all mounted up. Look how bloody good that is. Fits in there nice and snazzy. Now, originally I was going to mount the pass-through just under here on this kick panel. So down there you can see I have a spare little window for a switch. You can buy these things called like UHF pass-throughs that will just click straight into that. I'll put one up on the screen now so you know what I'm talking about. But when I get round to getting a Repco or something like that, I'll buy one of them, pop that in. We're definitely running out of places to mount stuff, and we've still got one more thing to mount in here. So anyway, let's keep going with the UHF. I need to run the power, also need to run the aerial. I'll probably do the aerial now, do the power last, then we're good to go. Now my bull bar already has a mount for it, also has a slot cut into it. If yours doesn't have a slot, I'd highly suggest cutting a slot now, because if you ever need to take the bull bar off and this cord's going all the way through into your dash, then you're gonna have a shit time because you're gonna have to pull it out. Now always make sure you got a GME logo facing forward, because that's what we all do here. And then that is ready to go. Right, now what we need to do is bring this cable here right round, tuck it nicely where you can't see it. I'm going to bring it through the passenger side on the GU because the driver's side is very hard to get through. So what I've done is I've just cut a slot in and then I've drilled 2 holes so that we can put a cable tie around it when we're done. I reckon that's one of the neatest ways to do it, rather than have the cord hanging and going under the grill, because that way you really see it, and this way it kind of looks like there's nothing there. Right, now the last step is wiring. Once you figure out if you want to do a permanently on system or an ignition system, I'm going to go for ignition, and the easiest way to do that is through the cigarette lighter. Right, I've just stripped back and joined my red and black wire in. That's super easy. Don't cut the wire, just strip it back, and then you can actually just twist it around and solder it in. So I'm going to tape these up, and that is the UHF power done. All that's back together, and I've tidied up all my wiring underneath there. So there's only one thing left to do, and that is test it. So when you go ignition on, we have power, baby. So if you guys are looking for a GME, definitely check out the full drive pack. It's just everything ready to go that you need. Maybe get one of those little pass-through things if you're going to do something similar. I'll get one, put that in when I can. But for now, that is bloody golden. And a huge thank you to GME for sending that one out and always looking after me on the channel. Let's move on. The last thing that I really want to do is put the spotlights on. Now, me personally, I'm not a huge fan of spotlights on full drives, but these steadies, they do look pretty sick. It's why I bought them. I got the smiley covers because I reckon they look a lot better as well. But on the front of this car, I just reckon they look a little bit weird. So I'm not too sure about leaving them on. But like I said, we are going camping in just 2 weeks. So I might need some lights. May as well whack them on, see if I like them. If not, in 2 weeks, I'll take them back off and we can deal with it then. The really good thing is with the Steady is that it comes with a wiring harness, so we don't have to make one of them. It comes with everything that you need. I did also take off these orange ring things. They come on the outside, but we ain't gonna need any orange on this car. So took them off, they look a lot better like that. So we'll get them mounted up. And the other thing that I've already done today, which I forgot to show you guys, is I got some longer bolts and mounted up the winch isolator onto the All Good off-road panel. So we are ready to go for isolation on the winch. You can see that looks a lot better mounted underneath rather than sitting on top like we had it. I probably will eventually reroute some of these wires and tidy that up a little bit more, but for now, that'll do. Let's get these spotlights mounted on the front of the car, see what you guys reckon about how they look. Now we do have to test these lights real quick, so I'm going to cover off these now and go and see if we can get them working. All right, they're working. God. Whew. They be bright. They be very bright. Now they will need adjusting, but you can't really do that until you're like setting up on a road somewhere. So I'll go out and adjust them maybe tomorrow night, but I'm very keen to see how they do on like a night road. I haven't had spotties since I had the nav, so kind of excited at the moment. All right, those lights are working mint. Now, we are basically done with the car itself. It's ready to go camping. The only things that I need to do is put this VMS in. Now, you guys probably know what a VMS is. It's the 3DX, which means it's like 3D maps. I've got to figure out how to use it, but I need to put it in the car eventually. It's just not something that I can be bothered doing right now, but it's going to go up on the windscreen somewhere. It's freaking huge. My original plan was to put it on this screen here. That's the old navigation system, but now we've got our transmission computer there, which is a little bit more important to look at. So I'm going to keep that there and then figure out a spot for the 3DX. We might even have to mount like a little bracket off the side so I can have it here somewhere. But boys, our friggin' cockpit is getting cluttered, so I have no idea where I'm going to put that thing. The next episode is probably just going to be like taking this thing out, testing it, and letting you guys see it finally outside of the shed, because obviously it's been in the shed, it's been in a few other workshops, but you guys haven't really seen it on the road. So keen to take it on the road, so we'll do that in the next step. Test out the winch, test out a few other little things. It's not going to be anything hectic, but just make sure it's ready for this camp trip, because where we're going, I don't want to get stuck. So catch you guys in the next episode. See you later.